I'm Tim Bradner. Welcome to Capitol Views, and welcome today to Representative Will Stapp of Fairbanks, newly elected to House District 32 in Fairbanks. So thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you. It's an excellent opportunity to be here and speak to all the wonderful viewers of KTOO. Thank you.
Uh, Will, maybe you can tell us a bit about your background, and are you from Fairbanks originally, or how long have you lived in the district?
Yeah, so well, I first came to Fairbanks and Alaska in generally, 6 months after I graduated high school. I grew up in the Seattle suburbs. Long story short, when I was in junior high, 9/11 happened. So I kind of resolved the fact that I wanted to serve in the military. So I enlisted in the Army. I served in the infantry. When I was in high school, I saw the documentary film series on HBO, Band of Brothers. So I figured being a paratrooper would be really exciting, so I enlisted in the infantry as a paratrooper. First duty station upon graduation of the infantry school and airborne school in Fort Benning, Georgia was Fort Wainwright, Alaska. So I got to Fort Wainwright in the old Stryker Brigade and what's called 423 Infantry in the 172nd back in November of 2006. And I had the opportunity to volunteer to go fight in Iraq with the Airborne Brigade in Anchorage. So the Stryker Brigade had recently finished a extended tour, and the Airborne Brigade had started their would-be extended tour. So I tell folks I volunteered to go fight in Iraq with the 509th Parachute Infantry Regiment. Ended up leaving Fairbanks in March of 2007, deploying to Iraq. Was wounded in combat on my first tour. Ended up getting back to Anchorage in December of 2007 after the deployment ended. Met my wife, Naomi. My wife's Alaska Native, so ended up getting out of the military after my last tour to Iraq at the end of 2010 and moved back to the state. Ended up moving back to Fairbanks. After I got out of the military, I ended up working in the insurance industry as licensed agent. So I've kind of been in the employee benefits space for a little over a decade now, working with employers in employee benefits and folks from not just the Fairbanks area, but all over our wonderful state. So I've had the privilege of traveling from places like Nome and Alaska and even smaller rural villages like Manicotah and Galena and Anaktuvik Pass and pretty much everywhere in between. So it's been a great privilege and the ability to kind of not only represent the folks in East Fairbanks, Fort Wainwright, and Badger Road, but all over the state as well.
Yeah, thanks for that introduction, Will. In that particular district, East Fairbanks, what do you hear from folks? What are they interested in? Particularly the folks that are connected to the military bases there. Is housing an issue, for example?
Yeah, housing, but honestly, kind of the overarching challenges of in the interior in Fairbanks, especially, kind of stem from the high cost of energy. So, as you well know, Fairbanks are considered on the rail belt, so we don't benefit from PCE because we're on the rail belt. We have some of the highest costs in the state in terms of electric rates, and because we're at the end of the supply chain. The cost of goods is higher, the cost of construction is higher, capitalization for businesses is less. So really, just the cost of living, primarily energy focused. Reminder to all my friends across the rest of the state, Fairbanks, we still have no large. I mean, we have a gasification of our town that we're working on, but the gas utility hasn't kind of reached many parts of the borough as of yet. So most of us still heat with heating oil, so high cost of living.
And heating oil can be very expensive depending on what happens in the world markets. Will, what committees are you on?
Well, I have the privilege of serving on the House Finance in the majority. So I serve on the Finance Committee. We've assigned subcommittees, so I have the privilege of holding the gavel for the University Subcommittee as a committee of the whole. I'm also going to be serving on the subcommittee for the health and community services budgets, working with members of the different types of committees to kind of go through the budgetary items and look at some of the governor's proposals for this coming fiscal year.
Well, just thinking about your district in the in your close proximity to the military, are you is Eielson, the growth at Eielson still underway, and there are there still some housing issues for the folks out there?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in case some of your viewers weren't aware, there was a period of time in which, the Air Force kind of looked at Eielson Air Force Base as potentially as an unaccompanied tour, which is incredibly rare to have a military installation not allowed or advise you not to bring your dependents and your spouses to duty stations that's within the continental United States. Alaska is considered an OCONUS duty station in the military, i.e., an overseas destination. But to have that happen in the U.S. is incredibly rare. So struggle with housing. How, of course, the housing issues impact not just military members in the Air Force and Eielson Air Force Base, but they also impact the rest of the town, given kind of our supply housing demands because we're a small population and an isolated community.
Yeah, and I have also heard, Will, that the housing allowance, maybe this is an Army issue, but the housing allowance for troops stationed there, there's sort of a problem in the formula that they're not allowed. They're actually disadvantaged, as I understand. Is that true?
Yeah, no, that's actually a really good point, really good argument. Not well known, but typically base allotment for housing is called a BH rates. It's how the military assesses, cost of housing. Basically, that's typically supposed to include utilities. When I was in the military, the BAH rate for Fairbanks was higher than that for Anchorage because that's kind of where the natural costs have been. In recent years, the BAH rate for Anchorage has actually been higher than Fairbanks, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me because I've had the afforded the privilege to live in both communities. So hopefully that's something that we can reconcile at the federal level with our congressional delegation and better serve our military service members.
Well, there's a lot of the military is very important to Fairbanks, and it's important to make sure that they're well taken care of. And uh, at any rate, Will, thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure talking, and I hope to see you in Juneau soon and to personally say hello.
Thank you.